Hello, and welcome to the Homewrecker podcast. I am the Golden Greek Alex Area. I'm joined as always by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous, amazing, smiling trophy wife, Monique. Monique, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm fabulous. How are you?
I'm excited.
Yes, me too.
I'm excited, but I'm fantastic as always, aside from that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
you are.
pretty psyched because we're going to talk about something that's pretty cool, something that I've always been interested in for as far back as I can remember. I don't even remember the first time I heard about D.B. Cooper, but that's what we're talking about today on the Homewrecker podcast. And for anybody that's finding us for the first time ever, I'm a former professional wrestler. I don't do that stuff anymore. I used to fake fight in my underwear. That's what I used to do. That's right. And Monique is my wife.
Your trophy
My
wife.
trophy wife. And we just like to talk about stuff that interests us.
Mm-hmm.
Typically related to paranormal, conspiracies, and those types of
Aliens.
things. Yeah.
The fun stuff.
The fun stuff. The stuff that, has just always fascinated us. And yeah, so this is the Homewrecker podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. And for those of you who know exactly who we are and what we do, welcome back.
Salutations. I kind of screwed that up.
Salute.
Salute.
Salute. That'll be
Salute.
we're just
I
going to
was
say
trying
that
to say
from now on.
salutations.
No, we just started a new thing. Salute.
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 We're making up our own language.
Why not?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So we said last week at the end of the show that this is what we're going to be talking about. I kind of sprung it on you. So
But we've talked about, like, you've mentioned it to me before. You just sprung it on me last
I
week.
sprung it on you last
we're
week.
going to
Yeah, that's what we're
talk
doing
about.
now. I'm just calling the shots.
Whatever.
That's
That's cool.
it.
Just going with the flow.
Yeah. Hey. So the D.B. Cooper thing, it's anybody that's not familiar with. Do you want to explain, or would you like me to, or do you want to just kind of back and
We
forth
can
it?
kind of back and forth in case one of us missed something. I'll start, though.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start? So take it away, beautiful lady.
Picture it. November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. A man walked into an airport. He bought a ticket for a plane going from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington for $20.
Imagine that. $20 for an airplane ticket.
Well, it was only going from Portland to Seattle, so it's not like it was going
Yeah,
across the country.
Doesn't matter. It's
But
still
still,
amazing.
$20?
Yeah,
That is awesome.
that's great.
Yeah. The name on the ticket? Dan Cooper. And
Dan Cooper,
Dan Cooper.
not D.
Not D.B. Cooper, Dan Cooper.
Okay.
Yes. So, Dan had on him a suit and a briefcase, no known luggage. He bought that ticket and he boarded the Northwest Orient flight?
Yes, Northwest
Yes,
Orient
it
is
was
the airline.
flight 305, and it was a Boeing 727 airplane. He gets on the plane, not too many passengers from the accounts given, and there's two stewardesses, flight attendants on the plane.
I think they were called stewardesses back then.
Yeah, but now it's flight attendants, so I'm just trying
Whatever.
to keep with the times.
Okay.
One named Florence, one named Tina. And there were two pilots. So
Yeah, you got a pilot and a co-pilot.
Yep, pilot
Right.
and co-pilot. So I believe it was the flight attendant, Florence, who went up to Mr. Cooper and he handed her a note. Now, all the accounts we read and heard say that she put the note in her pocket because she's used to guys slipping her notes. Like, what does that say? I wonder if that still happens.
I don't know if that.
Working like on an air, like being a flight attendant and constantly having people like slip you notes, that's kind of creepy. I don't know. I think that would be a little weird, but apparently she was used to it.
That's what she said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, does it still happen? I don't know. Maybe.
I'm sure it does. It's just kind
Probably.
of weird.
No.
But so he slips her a note, she puts it in her pocket, and he's like, no, you need to read that. And it's basically saying that he's hijacking the plane. In his briefcase is a bomb, to which he showed her, and he had his list of demands.
And what were those demands?
He
so far,
wanted
so good. What were those demands?
$200,000 in cash, and I believe it was all in 20s,
Small
correct?
bills.
Small
Yeah.
bills.
Well, it depends on what account, but we'll say small bills.
We're going to get into all the different discrepancies.
Yep.
That'll come.
Continue.
He wanted 4 parachutes, 2 regular back parachutes, and 2 front chutes. What else did he want? He wanted a sack, a satchel, a bag of some sort. And am I missing anything else?
I believe that was everything.
And so what he wanted is when the plane got to Seattle, he wanted all of his stuff, and he was going to let everyone go, but then he wanted the flight crew.
He wanted
To
the
stay
flight crew
aboard
to
the
stay.
plane.
He wanted a fuel truck there to fuel them up because he wanted to fly
To
from there
Mexico.
to Mexico City.
Mhm. And he had other odd demands. He didn't want the plane going above 10,000 feet.
Right.
He didn't, again, some accounts say different things, but he didn't want it going faster than 180.
180 miles per
Yeah,
hour.
miles per hour.
Seems to be the
He
consensus.
wanted the flaps on the wings. He wanted it like at 15 degrees, like down at 15 degrees. So he wanted very specific things.
Yeah.
Which makes people speculate.
Hey, we'll get
We'll
back
get
to
into that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
so, and they had to, the flight attendant said that we will have to do a fuel stop somewhere. So they plan to stop at Reno to fuel the plane.
Reno, Nevada. Correct.
Mhm.
Yes.
Am I missing anything so far?
So far, so good.
Okay, so they get to Seattle, they get his parachutes, they get him his money, his bag, they do everything they need to do, and they take off. While they're in the air, the pilots in the back of the Boeing 727.
He orders of the flight crew,
Thank you.
the stewardesses, flight attendants, whatever you call them now. I don't know the politically correct term, and I don't care. He orders them to go to the front with the pilots. So he is by himself in the back of the plane. The last stewardess, I forget which one it was, but
I think it was, I don't know.
whichever
Florentina.
one it was, which she's like, it's always recreated, but she's closing like the blinds, the curtains.
It's first class between coach. She's closing
Right,
the curtain.
she's closing the
divider.
dividing curtain, and she said she thought she saw him tying something around his waist. Continue.
Now, they're flying, I believe it was between Washington and Portland, Oregon.
Yes.
Kind of close to that border.
Heavily wooded area.
Yes. And in the back of a Boeing 727, there's a staircase that comes down. And the lights went on that the staircase went down, and then they felt like a bump. So that's when they thought, it was like 8:13 p.m., I think, when they thought that that's when he jumped out of the plane.
Yes, because
So-
they felt the pressure in the cabin
Mm-hmm.
change,
And they have like lights that show
Right.
when the doors open.
Yeah.
So it's speculated that Dan Cooper got the money and he used the parachute to parachute out of the plane with his money. And the way he got the name D.B. Cooper is
Well, hold
because,
on. Was he ever found?
No,
Okay.
allegedly no. We're going to get into that.
Okay.
The reason everyone knows him as D.B. Cooper is because a newspaper reporter had messy handwriting, and it just got translated as DB, and everyone ran with it. But it was really Dan Cooper
So-
on the ticket.
Right. So it's known as the D.B. Cooper case because that's just the name that got adopted widespread nationally. Again, can't believe everything in the news because it's not always accurate. Here's a case in point. 50 years ago, this was happening. So it was Dan Cooper on the ticket. That's the name he gave.
Mm-hmm.
There was no photo ID shown or anything like that. It wasn't required. Paid in cash. So we're to assume that was an alias. Why would you give your real name if you're going to pull
Right.
off a skyjacking? This is the only unsolved skyjacking in the history of history. He's never been caught. The FBI still doesn't know who it is, or so they say.
And they closed the case, too.
And they closed the case after 45 years.
Was it 2016?
I believe that was the
When they
date.
closed, yeah.
Now, we're going to get into all the different problems with the case. Now, what you gave is
Kind of basic.
a very basic overview of it. We'll get into a couple of the details as we remember them.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing with this case is that it's all been put together with eyewitness accounts, all through the testimony of eyewitnesses. So you have a sketch drawing, a composite drawing of what Dan Cooper looked like, of what we'll call DB, of what DB Cooper looked like, put together by people that were eyewitnesses that say they saw him. So it's essentially a sketch, and there's no actual photograph of the guy. And we've mentioned it before, I've mentioned it before, how the human mind is very fallible. We tend to remember things maybe not as accurately as they took place. Maybe we perceived something that happened that wasn't actually the way that it did happen. Eyewitness accounts are the worst kind of accounts because again, the mind is fallible. It can remember things differently. And you're going to have 10 different eyewitnesses that give 10 different accounts. So this whole case has been put together strictly on eyewitness accounts and testimony. So we watched a couple of different documentaries. I've listened to a bunch of different podcasts.
We read different things.
Read different articles. There's a bunch of books out. All of them have different details in them. So the details are different depending on where you get the story from.
Yeah, we're going to go over some of those discrepancies.
I think that has a lot to do with why this was never solved, because it was all eyewitness stuff that's been put together, pieced together through the years. Now, was it 1980, they found some of the money?
Yeah, with 1981, I think, in Tina Bar.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes. They found, I think it was $6,500, $6,800.
It varied. It was like $5,800, $5,800, like $5,892, $6,000. Again, discrepancies in the amount, but approximately $6,000.
Yeah, so $6,000 of the money, and we know it was the money because
the FBI tracked the serial number. So all those $20 bills, it was 21 pounds of money he was carrying.
Right.
And
yep.
all those bills, they wrote down all the numbers, and we're going to talk about that too, in terms of tracking the money. But a little boy was with his family on the beach of Tina Bar, and
in Washington.
Yes, in Washington State, and he's playing on the beach, and he's digging a hole to make a little fire pit, and he finds a shit ton of money, and some of it was kind of burned.
Score.
Yeah.
So the family contacts the authorities, and they come to find out, yeah, it's the money that was cataloged and.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Imagine if they just did it and they just started spending it.
Well,
how that would throw off the FBI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they showed the money, and it was burned, and you couldn't use it for anything. It was burned. It was all deteriorated.
Do you think if it wasn't burned and deteriorated, do you think they would have kept it?
I don't. That's a great question. I don't. That's speculation. Jeez. Let's not go down that road.
But yeah, so they find the money, they contact the FBI. So then that brings in more speculation about where D.B. Cooper actually possibly landed when he jumped off the plane. There's been, some people think the plane route didn't go the normal way. There was a storm.
The normal way of what?
I guess there's the normal route that they would. It kind of went off, was a little bit more like west than normal.
To go where?
To go from Seattle to Reno.
Okay.
Yeah, they're speculating it wasn't quite on the route that they thought the plane was on, and that's why money showed up there. Of course, my first thought was, well, he probably put it there because this is 10 years after the fact the money was found. Take some of that money and put it there to throw people off the track.
If he survived.
Yes.
Possible. And it was only about $6,000. It wasn't $200,000, so where's the rest of the money? Good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there have been over 900 people who have come forward and said that they were D.B. Cooper. There have been actual people who have come out and said it was their uncle, their father, their brother, their friend, their husband, all different people. So there's so many different accounts
mm-hmm.
and different people who have confessed to the skyjacking. I'm sure the FBI probably had to investigate all of them. I've got my feelings on all that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But this is why this case has been, I guess, so fascinating for so many people, because there's so many different people who've come out and admitted that it was them and wanted to take credit for it. Now, if you think about it, D.B. Cooper, he didn't hurt anybody, right? If you see going by all the eyewitness accounts, the sketch, he looked like kind of a cool guy, I guess. He was a cool customer according to all the eyewitness accounts, the stewardesses and everybody that dealt with him, the ticket agent that sold him his ticket, said he was pretty unassuming, and the stewardesses that dealt with him said that he was business. He was very cool, calm, and collected. Those their words.
Not nervous if somebody was about to hijack the plane.
Yeah, not nervous at all, but he was completely cool, calm, and collected.
Drinking his bourbon.
He had a bourbon, was his drink of choice.
Now, I do want to get into some discrepancies there.
Yeah, sure, why not?
One documentary says he just drank straight bourbon. Another documentary said
we watched several documentaries.
Several.
And they all
varies.
They all had different.
Some said bourbon and water. Some said bourbon and soda, which is typically soda water. Some said bourbon and 7-Up. So it's just kind of weird. Like, where are you getting this from?
Yeah.
Like, was it just bourbon and people just speculate because that was the drink at the time? I don't know.
Or did he not even have a drink at all? Who knows? I don't know. Again, this is what happens when you're piecing together eyewitness accounts of things. And I'm sure the people that were putting together the documentary had their sources that they used to get information from, and those probably had these details. Now, the other thing with eyewitness accounts and documentaries or whatever else, people take creative license when they're doing things like this to try to make things a little bit more interesting, to try to romanticize things. So details like the bourbon and soda, bourbon and water, whatever, could be tweaked and altered just a little bit just to maybe kind of fit a narrative, maybe make the guy seem cooler than he was. Who knows? It could be anything. But
yeah, because I guess having, like, a glass of water probably doesn't seem as cool.
Right.
Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows? We don't know but this is just an example of one of the details that is just different in so many of the accounts of the
You would think
incident.
If she's serving, like, the flight attendant, because she was on Unsolved Mysteries back in, the early 90s? Late 80s?
Late 80s, yeah. About 15 years after the... Yeah, so it was like mid to late 80s.
If she's serving the drink, you think they would know.
I guess.
I don't know.
Now, a lot of the problem was, too, that the FBI files were very difficult to get a hold of, so a lot of people were just kind of going by media interviews of the different people that witnessed the...
Since it's a closed case,
Yeah.
one of the things that I do want to do is I want to file a right-to-know request with the Seattle Police Department and the FBI for the records for that report, because it cannot be released until the case is closed. It's now closed. So, that's
So
something...
you want to get all these files?
Yeah, I want to get copies of everything.
So we'll
Copies
do
of
a follow-up
picture.
episode when we get those files in about
Just
10
keep
years.
in mind, I was researching, because I looked at, like, Seattle Police, and especially with everything going on there right now. But it says it takes, like, 6 to 12 months to get those records.
Why would you want the Seattle Police, though? The FBI
Because they were on the
everything.
scene, too. So you
Okay.
don't know what they might have in their report. Do they have any photographs? Do they have everything? They might have given everything to the FBI, but they should have a copy of any report of theirs. Now, again, it was 1971, so they might not. They probably have to go into their archives, but it's worth a shot.
All right, so in 10 years, when we get all this information and have the time to go through it all, we'll do a follow-up episode.
There you go.
Wonderful. So yeah, getting back on track, a lot of the details are just off because they're all eyewitnesses. And again, as time goes on, maybe you add in a couple of details that you remember later, that those kind of things happen. So
One of the things to keep in mind, too, is the passengers had allegedly had no idea that this was happening.
on the first leg of the trip, yes.
It wasn't until they got off the plane and the FBI started directing them, we have to talk to you, where they realized. So they weren't really nervous on the plane, it was just whatever, they might not be paying attention.
From a couple of the different accounts that I've read, nobody really noticed him. He was kind of an unassuming guy, just kind of hanging out.
There was one guy kind of across from him, diagonal from him,
Yeah.
who reckon he could describe him, but for the most part, if nobody's really paying attention, and then if they knew that the plane was being hijacked, being under such stress could cause them to misremember as well. So either way, it's going to make it difficult because you're depending on other people.
It's fallible.
It is.
And that's what this whole case is based on, is human testimony, eyewitness testimony, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So, you and I were watching one of the many documentaries. I'm not going to name them. You just go, you can find, there's so many different ones out there. The story's been told so many different ways, so many different times. There's a movie made about it. There's no shortage of ways for you to go and look into this yourself. There is a danger, though, of going down a really deep rabbit hole, because there is so much to this case as far as trying to figure out who it was that did it. Do you want to get into maybe some of these suspects? Some of the prime suspects?
There's like a handful of people I want to talk about.
All right.
One person is Dwayne Weber. Now, Dwayne Weber was a man, he had a criminal record. He was a man with a criminal record. He was a gentleman. Is that it? He did serve, did he serve in Vietnam? I believe. His wife, Jo, came forward after he died, saying that while he was on his deathbed, he confessed he was D.B. Cooper.
No. He confessed to his wife that he was Dan Cooper.
Ah, thank you. He was Dan Cooper.
Dan Cooper. That's what he said to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
His wife has no idea who the hell Dan Cooper is. She doesn't know. So she starts researching Dan Cooper and comes to find out that it's D.B. Cooper, that's the name he used.
Mm-hmm.
She went to her library, her local library, checked out a book on D.B. Cooper, and in the book was her husband's handwriting was in the margins. I was unable to find out what that handwriting said, but we just know that this guy checked out this book from his local library and wrote something in the margins. I don't know what it was. But she believes that he confessed to her that he was the infamous skyjacker.
Mm-hmm.
And she, I guess, is still trying to crusade to prove that it was her husband.
But she also made it sound like she didn't want it to be her husband. So I think she's just trying to find the truth.
I think she's just trying to figure out, right, exactly.
Because with that, there's good and bad. There's notoriety if it's her husband, but then again, if it's her husband, then he's a criminal that did this, and...
Well, yeah, he was. But again, going back to something I said earlier, I think some of the mystique of why people think D.B. Cooper's so cool is because he was portrayed as this cool customer. He didn't hurt anybody, right? I mean, he said he had a bomb, but chances are it probably wasn't real. He didn't really hurt anybody physically. I mean, yeah, he traumatized, I'm sure, the flight attendants and the pilots, but they survived. They lived. He didn't manhandle them in any way. He didn't hurt them in any way. And it was $200,000. It wasn't like it was $1 trillion or whatever. I mean, it's a lot of money, especially for back then.
That's a lot of money.
But he was never found. He kind of got away with it. So that kind of builds up the mystique over the years. That the more time that goes by that he's not caught, people start thinking, "Wow, this guy was cool." He jumps out of a plane.
But not just that.
There's a lot of elements here that make him kind of like this mythical figure.
But it's also too, he might not have gotten away with it. He might have died.
That's one of the theories.
He could have died.
He died because of the wooded area that he jumped in. Now we left out a detail, actually a couple of details, sorry. It was at nighttime, which is very important. You're jumping out of a plane at night with a parachute, tough to see below you, right? He jumped over a wooded area.
Allegedly.
Wooded area. Allegedly, right?
We'll get into that.
And it was
raining. There was a storm.
It was a storm. So, kind of a lot of things there that people that maybe think that he didn't survive, they've got a little bit of ammunition there. And the fact that they found some of the money burned and deteriorated, did he perhaps land and burn some of the money to stay warm? Because again, all we know that he was wearing was that suit and a trench coat, and that's it. So in almost winter time up in that part of the country, you'd be able to stay warm just wearing that. You know, I mean,
But
maybe
you don't know what he had on
maybe he had
underneath.
something on under too.
Did he have something else in his briefcase?
We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know.
One of the things I want to talk about is the parachute.
Okay.
He asked for 4 parachutes. Now, from most accounts, the back parachute, the main chute, he got 2 different kinds. A more modern one, and then a military style one. Now, there were discrepancies with that. Some accounts said that he went for the more modern chute. Other accounts said he used the military chute. And then other accounts, aside from that, said one of the chutes was a dummy chute made to not open. One documentary even stated that they had it there, like it was like, I forget where, do you remember where it was kept?
I forget where it was kept. It might be.
It's being kept somewhere.
Right? It was kept somewhere, and they showed it.
But they didn't say which chute it is.
Right.
And I think that's really weird. Why can't we get any straight answers as to which parachute? Did he take the military one? Did he take the modern one? And which one was the dummy chute that wasn't set to open? Because wouldn't that kind of answer things for us? Because if he took the dummy chute, even with the front parachute, odds are it brings down the chance that he made this jump, right?
There are a lot of questions you're asking that I'm feeling. Yeah.
We're going to bring up like a million questions and have no answers for you. But it's to get you to think about this stuff.
This is all, because again, this whole thing, there's so many questions that have never been answered. Now, one of the things you and I noticed, and we're going to jump around quite a bit now, but we've got the basic story of what happened out of the way. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff, hypothesizing, theorizing, and all that good stuff. One of the things, when we were watching one of the dramatization, reenactments of the whole thing, was they lowered the stairs on the 727 in the back, and they said that the pilot said that he could tell he jumped because of the...
It's like he felt a bump.
He felt like a bump. So almost like, somebody goes down, weight coming off of something, and so he felt the plane kind of shift. You and I both, it's like we were reading each other's minds. At the same time, said, well, that doesn't mean he jumped. What if he just did that to throw them off? And this brings to mind another question, which you and I both said too. At the same
What if
time.
he didn't jump?
What if he didn't jump? What if he didn't get off the plane? What if he didn't jump at all?
What if he stayed on the plane
He
the whole
stayed on the
time?
plane and hit. That's another thing that has never been said anywhere in any documentary, any
I've
report.
searched. I've read different articles online. I've tried to see, I know they searched the plane, but how deeply did they search? Did they search the luggage, the cargo area? Is there a way? Because they speculate this is a guy with military history because he seems to know a lot of flying history.
People speculate he was either a pilot, somebody that was in the military, or somebody that maybe possibly worked for the airline. Mm-hmm. Somebody that had knowledge of airplanes.
Yeah. And so what if he knew from where he was, he could get into another section of the plane and hide, and then just crawl out and run away?
Crawl out when the plane landed in Reno and got away. Or, who knows what was in that briefcase. Now, the stewardess said that she saw a bomb. She said what appeared to be a bomb. Now, obviously, she's not. If you showed me, open up the suitcase, said this is a bomb, and I saw a bunch of tubes and wires and things all connected, I'd go, okay, I don't know. I'm not trained. I have no idea.
That's not a bomb, you silly. That's fake.
Yeah, right.
You gonna take that chance?
Right. Now, so of course we're to assume that, but as was pointed out in one of the documentaries we watched, we don't know what else was in that briefcase. Mm-hmm. He just kind of quickly opened it, and she kind of saw. Now, he could have put other things in that briefcase that he could have used, perhaps a duffel bag to put the money in. I think that was one of the items.
Mm-hmm. A knife, food, or gloves.
Food, a lighter. We don't know. Things that you could use to survive.
And you don't know what he had in his pockets either.
He could have had, now going on our theory that he didn't jump.
Yeah.
He could have put one of those fake mustaches, a bald cap, a baseball hat, something to blend in. He could have been wearing one of those baggage, like those airline uniforms,
Mm-hmm.
like the baggage plane attendants people. He could have that on under his suit if he hit on the plane. And when it landed, he gets out of wherever he was hiding, and he can blend in and look like he's somebody that works for the airline. and he gets away. Maybe he gets the duffel bag, whatever. We don't know. We have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, from anything I've seen, I've been unable to find how thoroughly the plane was searched. So, and again, I don't have knowledge of this plane either, so it could be that there really isn't anywhere to hide, and that's why it's never really mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But not knowing that information, that was one of the first things we said was, who's to say the frickin' guy jumped?
Yeah, because that was like the first thing I thought of. I'm sitting there and I'm just taking into account, how clever would that be? You make everyone think you jumped out of the plane. You asked for parachutes. Everyone's going to be searching for you thinking you jumped somewhere and you didn't.
Pretty brilliant.
Right?
It's classic, what's the term, misdirection.
Yes.
Everybody's looking for, they're looking for you down here because they think that's where you jumped.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
he's a magician.
Maybe you even toss some money out there. Maybe you take you band it all
some
together
bundles of
and
money.
toss it out and it gets found 10 years later. Who knows? I'm just saying it's a possibility, but again, that's just going off the information that we found.
Now, some people speculate that there's a couple of things. As I said before, that the airplane route didn't go the way everyone thinks it does. It went off course a little bit, which is why there was money found at Tina Bar. There is also speculation that he didn't actually jump until he got to Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, that was one of the documentaries hypothesized that, and they
That
showed,
makes sense.
They showed the flight path. They showed that if you see the topography of the region, it'd be a better place to jump.
Well, yeah, because if you look at...
There's nothing
flat.
around. It's totally flat. I mean, yeah, there's like some desert brush and whatever, but
compared,
there's nothing around.
Yeah, the Northwest, like where they were with all the trees, you could get impaled on a pine tree. You could land in a lake or a river, and the water's cold, so you could get hypothermia. So it doesn't really make sense to jump there, but you make them think that you jumped there.
You make them think you jumped there, right? And again, another detail I was unable to find anywhere was whether or not, or how quickly the steps were brought back up by the flight crew. We don't know if they were or if they weren't. I'm not sure if they're automatic, if they're manual. I don't know.
Because I questioned, at what point did one of the flight attendants go back there to see if he's there? Was it until they got to Reno? I can't imagine the plane could land with the stairs down.
Their instructions were to remain in the front until the plane landed. That's what I believe the instructions were.
So how do you know? Another documentary mentioned, but I couldn't find this anywhere else. They had 3 fighter jets following the airplane.
Yeah.
So they would have seen him jump.
Maybe. It all depends because they're not going to, it's nighttime, remember that. So are you really going to see somebody jumping out of the plane if you're not looking right at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if it's dark, are you going to see the chute when it goes? If you don't know that you're looking for a chute, I mean, I don't know. Again, and if you have planes following another plane, if he jumped, maybe he waited. Again, based on, this is all crazy theories, but maybe he waited till he saw the fighter jets fly overhead before he pulled his cord. I don't know. Because if you're in a fighter jet, you're looking at the plane ahead, you're not looking behind you, so I don't know. It's quite possible that the fighter jets, if they were there, again, only one account we read or saw had that detail in it, so I don't even know how accurate that is.
But that's kind of part of the point, is there's so many details that some people say happen and some people don't mention, and it's different.
One of the things that was kind of one of the details that was kind of universally in most of the accounts was that one of the demands Cooper had was that they take off with the back stairs down. And the pilot kind of went back and forth with him saying, you can't fly the plane like that, you can't take off with the stairs down. So Cooper acquiesced to that and said, fine, take off with the steps up. And he'll put it down later, or if he had the pilot put it. Again, that's a detail I'm not sure of, and I don't know 727 planes, so I don't know if that's a manual thing that you have to do manually. Can you do it manually? Does it have to be done remotely by a button in the cockpit? I don't know.
I think after this, they changed the 727 from what I read. They altered the 727 after this incident, so the stairway cannot be brought down while in flight. Like the pilot has to control when the stairs go down. So I believe it was a manual. You could do it from back there. At any point, you could open it.
Are you sure of that?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. That's just, I'm not going to speak to it because I wasn't able to find the information. That didn't come up in any of the stuff that I looked at.
Fair enough.
But that was one of the things, and the other thing was that I guess he was really kind of rushing the pilots and trying to rush them while they were refueling because he wanted to get the hell out of there. He didn't want the authorities to get him. And another one of the theories is that the reason he wanted all the money ready in such a short amount of time was so they wouldn't have time to photograph and account for the money, get the serial numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may also be why he chose Thanksgiving Eve, because you figure most people are off on that day. It's a holiday. You're not going to have as many people working. So if you have a request for $200,000 in small bills, who's going to photograph it? Who's going to do all that stuff? But they stalled long enough where they could get that done before giving in the cash. Now, that's one of the things, getting the cash. Supposedly, none of that money, aside from the nearly $6,000 that was found in '81, none of that money's ever turned up in circulation, supposedly. So that's another thing that's pretty interesting.
It leads speculation of either one, he never made it out alive, he never got to spend the money because he's dead somewhere and we just haven't found him. It could be that possibly he just never spent the money, which would seem weird. But then one documentary brought up why he could have spent the money and it never showed up.
And why is that?
Because even though they had all the numbers, back then in the early 70s, it's not like it was now. You have people physically taking note of that. What is the chance if he does like $20 here, $40 here and there, that it's actually going to get picked up on? Then, once it goes how they destroy cash after so long, it's supposed to be checked, but that was all done by hand. So give them like some kind of ratty bills too, so it won't get circulated as much. It's very possible that he used all the money and it just slipped through the cracks.
Right, and also apparently the year prior to the hijacking, there was some kind of law passed by Congress having to do with the money and keeping track of it in that certain way. And it could be that that law was so new that people weren't really used to it yet and were just kind of laissez-faire about it, pretty nonplussed about following it because it was so
Makes
new
sense.
and it maybe wasn't being enforced all that much just yet. And usually with new laws like that, they don't go into effect immediately. There's usually like a grace period, like, okay, as of this day or
because
whatever.
sometimes you have to train people
Right.
to do everything.
So it could very well be that the money maybe was spent immediately or incrementally here and there. It just was never picked up. Because really, if you're a bank teller or and again, if you're going to the grocery store, they're going to be able to trace back the money to this. This is 1971 we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't all these, surveillance everywhere.
Because it seems very unlikely that this guy just went into a bank and deposited, oh, here's $200,000.
But that's another theory too, is that maybe the money didn't, if he survived, maybe the money didn't show up in circulation because it could be that he just took all the money and put it in a safe deposit box somewhere. It's not like if you go and get a safety deposit box at a bank, they don't ask you what you're putting in there. It's none of their business.
Mm-hmm.
So that could very well be the case too. It might be just sitting in a bank somewhere, and it'll never get discovered unless they go through and do an audit of everybody's safety deposit box in banks around the world, essentially, because it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
If you survive.
He could have gone to another country, have
Right.
the cash exchange there.
Could be. And what are the chances of? So the whole money thing, to me, I kind of that one I can see slipping through the cracks. So I don't really put that much stock into it. Aside from the $6,000 that was found, the money's never been located anywhere that we know.
Mm-hmm. Something else I want to bring up about a discrepancy.
Okay.
His tie.
He was wearing a clip-on tie, and before
From
he jumped,
JCPenney.
yeah, and before he jumped, he took it off and left it on the seat
Mm-hmm.
of one of the seats on the plane.
That seemed to be the only evidence he left of himself. He was chain smoking, and he had the cigarette butts, but apparently that got lost, which is going to come up later, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, there wasn't DNA testing and stuff back then.
But
so
if they held on to it, if they didn't lose it. What's weird is they said that was
yeah.
lost, and I thought that was kind of interesting that they lost it, but
Again,
such a
yeah,
big case.
Again, that's something that was said, so how accurate was it? That's why I'd really love to see those FBI files.
Yeah.
I'd really love to
So
see
he
those.
left his clip-on tie on the plane. Now, allegedly, people have been able to get their hands on it, and they have tested particles on this tie.
Couple different places.
Different labs have tested particles, and there were 2 different documentaries with 2 different answers as to where he could have been with that tie.
Well, the stuff that was found on his tie.
Based off the particles found,
Yes.
based off the particles found on one documentary, it said with the specific particles on the tie, because there was like a whole bunch, but the ones that really stood out where you could tie him back to being somewhere, particles that were only found at a Boeing plant. So they speculated he was some kind of plant manager or something where he was constantly working inside the plant, and those types of particles would get on his tie. However,
That's one of them.
another documentary stated that the particles found had to do with red phosphorus used in certain tubing for televisions and radar and things of that nature. And so he probably worked at some kind of plant with that red phosphorus, or like where they made radar or where they made televisions, something along that line. So I just thought it was really weird that you have these particles that stand out, but you're still, like, there's different places where it says he could have come from to have those particles on the tie.
Yeah.
It's just weird, right?
Well, it's different. It's another one of those things that leads to why this hasn't been solved, because there's so much information that's just conflicting or contradictory. So, yeah.
And you had mentioned, we're kind of going through suspects, kind of, it seems like sprinkled in. There's another suspect, Kenny Christensen.
Yes.
You had mentioned it was speculated that somebody worked for the airline.
That's one of the theories, yeah.
So from what I've read, Kenny worked for Northwest Orient. And his brother, Lyle, is adamant it was his brother who was Dan Cooper. So that's another suspect. And it was like, okay, well, he worked for the airline, made sense. It came out after the guy had died. His brother came out and said it, but
now why though? Do you know why?
I don't remember why.
All right, so because there's pictures of him right around that time where he's wearing sunglasses and the suit and the coat and everything, where he looks remarkably similar to the sketch of the widely distributed sketch, which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah.
Let me get through this first, though. And when he died, when Kenny Christensen died, he had exactly $200,000 in his bank account. So there you go. Now, does that mean that the guy hijacked the plane? No.
Excuse me.
Doesn't mean that, but
you have $200,000 in your bank account. You must be D.B. Cooper, right?
He looked remarkably like the guy in the sketch, and his brother is saying that he confessed it to him. So,
but let's talk about that sketch.
okay, so all right, so that's Kenny Christensen. So now you want to talk about the sketch?
Yes. So now we're going to talk about the sketch. The flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. Florence Schaffner. She was on Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
They did a little thing about this case.
A little thing. It was a big thing.
It was only like 10 minutes.
Whatever. Anyway, Unsolved Mysteries back in the 80s. Awesome show. Robert Stack. Hell yeah.
Yes. One of the things that she brought up is that the sketch wasn't really accurate.
Yeah, she felt that it didn't really look like what she remembered.
She said she spent the most time with him. She remembers what he looks like. So this made me think of a lot of questions. One, if it's not accurate, why would, like, again, I don't know this.
Why has it been so widely circulated? If it's
Why
not
wouldn't
accurate,
you come
according
forward
to the
and
woman
say,
who spent the most time
I
with
spent
him?
the most time with them. Take my, like, let me give you the sketch. Because they did a sketch, and it looked a little different, but she said that was more accurate. The people who have come forward, why would you not show her, and maybe this happened, but we don't know, we can't find this information. Why not go to her and say, hey, here's a picture of this guy. Was that him? Instead of having, just go to the person who was there with them the whole time. Is this the guy? Is this the guy? This person came forward. Does that look like him? Especially back then. And within, like, even the next 10 years to come, ask the person who was there.
Makes sense to me.
It's just really weird. All these things, to me, just seem so bizarre. Doesn't add up.
Right. Who else you got for suspect?
I want to say his name differently, but Robert Rackstraw.
Yes. This one, I think, this one's pretty promising.
It seems like the one, because of his military background, he was a paratrooper. What else? There were a few things. He allegedly served for the CIA.
He worked for the CIA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. But I thought there was something else with him.
He was very well versed in code, and that's
Yes.
that's something we forgot to mention.
Thank you.
This is very important. There was somebody claiming to be D.B. Cooper who sent 6 letters to a newspaper in, was it Seattle?
Was
Seattle
it one or was
newspaper?
it several?
6 letters. What?
Oh, to different. Was it one newspaper or
I
several?
believe it was the same
Okay.
newspaper. I believe it was the same newspaper.
Because again, you see these stories, but sometimes these details are either left out or it's just something different.
Right. So, and it maybe wasn't mentioned because it could be, maybe people just wrote it off as, well, yeah, I mean, you imagine people claiming to be the guy. It's probably somebody having fun and sending letters to the newspaper. Well, only 4 of those letters were published and 2 were not published, but I guess in the 2 that were not published, that were kept from the public, but I guess were in the FBI files, he pretty much says who he is. In code.
In code.
And his code is broken by a guy that served with him in the military. So he essentially admitted to being D.B. Cooper, and that he did it because he wanted to get out of the system. This is in the letters. And we'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes so everybody can check it out. But the way he was going to get out of the system was by taking this money and getting out of the system, whatever that means. But for back then, $200,000 was a lot of money, and he figured that was enough to get him out of the system according to the letters that he wrote. And in those letters, I forget how the codes were deciphered or how he encoded all this information, but essentially when the code was broken by this guy who served with Rick Straw, it said, I'm Robert Rackstraw. It said Rockstraw, excuse me. It said his name, and he pretty much spelled it out. That was me.
Yeah.
And Dan Cooper is not real, or D.B. Cooper is not real, was also said. Which I think everybody pretty much realized. Yeah, it's obviously
How clever would it be if that was really his name? Because you'd be like, nobody would think I used my real name. The guy's real name is Dan Cooper. He didn't jump off the plane.
It's a pretty common name, too.
It is, yeah.
Think about it. So, yeah. So that's why I think that was a promising one, and also just the fact that he worked for the CIA, and we'll get into what we think in a minute or in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But
because that's kind of at the end of everything, all the things read, documentaries watched. I came up to my own conclusion. I kind of
you really want to get into our conclusion?
No,
right now
I'm just
before having some
saying.
more fun with this?
I came up to my own conclusion,
Okay.
and then you started coming around. So we're gonna get there shortly, but still gonna talk about a few more things. Go on.
All right. Was there anybody else that you had?
I only wanted to focus on those 3 because there's so many. I felt like
Okay.
those were kind of
I'm going to tell you
bigger
some
ones.
crazier
Let's go.
theories, but they're pretty fun, and they, I mean, you can't rule them out because again, nobody knows. You don't know for sure.
You can't prove it, and you can't not prove it.
So there is a theory out there that Dan Cooper was actually a woman.
Ooh.
And there is a suspect. I do not remember the name, and I'm not like you, where I take meticulous notes. I do a lot from memory. And here I am, the guy saying the human mind is fallible, and all I do everything from memory. It makes sense, right? Discrediting myself here.
Well, I write it down, and
But-
then I remember it from writing it down.
Well, I don't do it yet. So I can't remember the name, but there was one of the first gender reassignment surgeries that was ever done in the United States. It was done to a former paratrooper, a military paratrooper. So the theory is that Cooper was actually a woman, and the reason that they never found D.B. Cooper is because they've been looking all this time for a man when it was in fact a woman who pulled this off. I mean, it's a crazy theory, but if you think about it, it's kind of genius, right?
Yeah.
You were a man, born a man biologically, and then you decided, I don't want to be a man anymore, I want to be a woman, whatever, each your own. And as the surgery, but then obviously you still have the build of a man. I mean, you can get, and remember, this is 1971. The technology and all this stuff, it's not like it is now. Medicine wasn't like it is now. They couldn't do all the things that they do now. So it could be that your bone structure doesn't really change.
Unless you have plastic surgery to do that.
Right. But again, how common was that back then? It really wasn't. This was a new thing. So it could be that if this was the case, that this person was able to look like a man, essentially, because...
But how clever would it be even if you didn't have gender reassignment, but just you're a woman and you dress like a man?
Could be. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be real clever too. But again, it's the voice. Those type of things are I think we have to take into account as well. But if you have a deep voice, you could be mistaken for a man and you're a woman. There's all kinds of different things. So that is one of the more crazy theories that I heard. But
That's a pretty cool theory.
But when I saw the evidence pointing to this particular person, I was like, it's interesting, and it would explain why you never caught him, because you're looking for a guy when it's really a woman.
Clever.
It's a theory.
Yeah.
Now, did you have any crazy theories that you came across that you wanted to talk about? Because I got another really good one.
No, I just want to talk about my own, but we'll do that at the end.
So it's all about you. Just want to talk about you all. Okay. I gotta have some fun with you. So this is a good one. This one I really enjoyed, and it ties into something that we talked about on our show previously. Do you remember the name Frank Morris?
Yes. You just kind of mentioned it to me in passing, like a little snippet. Go on.
Okay, you got all excited there.
Because I know what you're going to say.
There is a guy who says that he met Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers and knew them very well, and that they were in Mexico. Now, anybody that's not familiar with who Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers are, we talked about them in our show on Alcatraz. They
Go
are
back
the
and listen.
3 inmates who escaped but were never found and were presumed dead. And this guy says that he found them and came across them when he was spending a lot of time in Mexico. This gentleman is a doctor. He owns a gym, he owns his own practice, and he says that he came across Frank Morris, who kind of hinted to him that he was D.B. Cooper, and that he pulled off this bank heist. And yeah, he's got a lot of. He actually wrote a book, which I ordered. I'm going to read the book when it arrives, and yeah, he's got a lot of compelling information, which it's pretty crazy because just the fact. I mean, we kind of came to the conclusion those guys probably survived. They did escape.
Yeah.
They survived, and there was a picture of the 2 brothers that surfaced many years later. It was them. So they definitely survived. And now, what if they survived and then they needed money and Frank Morris pulls off a skyjacking. I think that's pretty cool.
It's a really cool theory.
Now, the only thing with this theory that makes it even crazier is that this gentleman, this doctor who came out with this information, also said that he believes Frank Morris was also, along with the Anglin brothers, was the Zodiac killer. Yeah, it's a crazy theory.
Wow.
Yes, and he's not the only one that said this. There are a couple of other people that have come out and said they have information that can tie the Zodiac killer to D.B. Cooper, to Frank Morris, and it's crazy. But it's like I told you the other day, I was going down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking
I know
about.
he's like, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Like, don't worry, honey, I'll pull you back up.
It's crazy, but there's so many things that they just line up. And again, this is people who are saying they came across there's over 900 people that have confessed to the crime. So these are just people that have said they've come across these people, and these are their theories, and that allegedly these people confessed to them. Now, Morris never came out and said he was D.B. Cooper, but he left this guy coded messages. He kind of hinted at different things, and this guy was able to kind of put the pieces together. And he's got we'll put it in the show notes, he's got a YouTube channel where he's got a ton of videos where he talks about this and a bunch of other stuff. It's pretty interesting.
Maybe Frank Morris did that just to throw people off, just to
Could be.
throw confusion out there.
Possibly.
Maybe, I don't know, like for whatever reason. It's possible people say that they do things that they didn't do. It's very possible.
Of course it's possible. Anything is possible. That's the thing with this.
One thing I just remembered, though, that we
Sure.
forgot to mention.
Yeah.
We talk about the body in terms of if he didn't make it, why did they never find a body?
Yeah.
One theory that I forgot to mention was after the hijacking, Mount St. Helens erupted.
Erupted in 1980.
1980.
Yeah.
Now, you would think they would have found a body before then. But there's speculation that all the ash and everything that came down could have covered him. And that's why people still can't find him.
Right, because the area that the FBI believes is the drop zone where he would have landed. And again, this is going off the data from the pilot saying that he felt the pressure and all that stuff that the pilot said where he thought this is the time that he jumped. They determined a specific area to be the drop zone. That particular area ended up was in the path of destruction of Mount St. Helens and it erupted. So again, we're talking about a heavily wooded area that they searched, but I mean, how thoroughly can you search an area? And who knows how treacherous the terrain was.
Mm-hmm.
It's not populated for a reason because it's heavily wooded. There's mountains and everything else. So
just something I forgot to
And
mention,
that
which
is-
I thought was worth mentioning.
it's definitely worth mentioning, yeah, because
Mhm.
if he did die, if he did not survive, he could have been covered up by ash. He could have been in the path of lava that came down. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah,
Well, hopefully he
essentially-
was dead by that point.
Yeah, hopefully for him. So yeah, that's a good thing to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, getting back to the Frank Morris thing, I mean, how crazy is that?
That is crazy.
It's nuts.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's
But
cool.
just one of the crazier theories. Now, there's so many other ones we can get into. There's a theory that D.B. Cooper was a priest. Somebody came out and said that it was somebody that they knew, and
I think a lot of people came out and said it was somebody that
there's
they
a
knew.
bunch of there's a bunch of books that are out on it. They all have very compelling arguments, and these people say that the person that they said was D.B. Cooper confessed it to them. There's kids that have come out and said, my dad confessed to me, it was him, he showed me the money, he had it in a trunk, he had the parachute, all kinds of different crazy stories. But they're all, they're as credible as any other one, I guess, because how do you determine who's telling the truth and who isn't? It's so hard, because the case, again, on its face, there's just so many issues with the eyewitness accounts and the story.
There's so many
There's so many discrepancies, so many contradictions, so many questions that haven't been answered, or maybe have been answered but just haven't been made public.
Yeah.
So it's tough. There's a lot of speculation, and really that's all anybody can do. That's why it's tricky, because you can go down a rabbit hole looking at all the different people and exploring all the different theories. Now, if you don't have anything else you want to mention, I want to get into what you think is the case with D.B. Cooper. What is your theory on everything? Because I think I've gone a little more into the fringe kind of theories on it, but I have my own theory as well. So I want to hear yours first, and then I'll give mine.
Okay. As I said before, after all was said and done, after doing a lot of reading, watching a lot of documentaries, hearing different people's stories, I feel like it's all bullshit. I think that it wasn't what everyone said it was. You have minimal amount of witnesses. You have a flight attendant who, again, she's saying the sketch doesn't match, and it was kind of bizarre. You have just so many discrepancies. I think it didn't actually happen. I think it was just something made up. Now, who made it up? Could it be the FBI? Could it be the CIA? I don't know. But I think that it's all bullshit.
So you don't think there was ever a skyjacking that took place?
I don't.
You think it was completely made up?
I think
Completely
it
out of
was
whole
made
cloth?
up.
Totally fabricated?
But why? I wonder, because was it to start get the ball rolling to change regulations? Because there were a lot of skyjackings happening at that time.
There more so after this incident, more copycats came up. More people were attempting this kind of thing. And in turn, what happened was airport security started to get tighter. They started introducing x-ray machines into airports. It's not like it is now, by any means.
No, but it brought more security.
But pre-9/11, security got a little bit tighter. So,
but it's got to start somewhere.
So is that what happened here?
I don't know.
Is that what you think, that this was just a way to start getting the ball rolling on getting more security?
I think it was get the ball rolling on something, but I'm not 100% sure what. I also read something else I thought was interesting, that in regards to the Boeing 727, there was, I guess, an airline, there was a group that were working on using those rear stairs that open up to use it as a slide, make a slide to transport cargo to countries that the U.S. really shouldn't be in. So that way they could drop cargo on the border, like Laos and certain countries that they shouldn't have been in at the time. And that happened shortly after. So it just makes you question, okay, like what's going on? I'm not 100% sure why they would have done it, but it just, nothing makes sense with this. So part of me is like, okay, it's just complete, total, utter bullshit. And then there's a small part where if it was real, he probably didn't even jump off the plane. Or he definitely didn't jump where they say he jumped.
I'm not going to say I totally agree with you, but I think your theory has some merit. I could see where it would be plausible. I think there was a person who did all this. I think it'd be really tough to get all these people to say what they said, to get eyewitnesses.
And I'm not saying that there wasn't a guy on the plane.
Where did the money come from? All that kind of thing. Okay, what are you saying?
Like, they could have acted it all out, per se, the people on the plane. So if the pilots were involved, the flight attendants,
two flight attendants,
you have basically 5 people.
Okay.
Passengers are just the passengers.
Okay.
But if you have the pilots and the flight attendants and Dan Cooper, that's only 5 people who really need to be involved. And maybe just one flight attendant knew.
Well,
maybe just one captain knew. So the less people that you have involved, the better.
So you think that they were all kind of in on it together, possibly?
Possibly.
And they split the money after the fact?
I don't think there was any money to split. I think it just went back to the FBI. It was just all a ruse.
Well, why would they do that?
Again, I don't know if it was to start that increasing security, get that ball rolling.
So you think this was like a false flag operation,
Yeah.
essentially?
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. Well, I mean, no, that defines false flagging as something that's completely orchestrated to put something into place that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Okay. That's very interesting. It's an interesting theory. And there are theories that say that, he had an accomplice. He maybe had somebody waiting for him wherever close by to where he would have jumped out. Yeah, there's all kinds of theories on that.
How about you? What are your thoughts?
I think that there was this thing did occur because there's too many variables in my view. That there was a person that jumped, or maybe hit. I think he, until I see differently, I think he hit on the plane somewhere and got off because that would make the most sense to me to do.
Right.
It would be the smartest thing to do. But again, that's with just knowing what I know. If I can get information that shows the layout of the plane, if it was ever searched, if the when the steps came up, did they land in Reno with the steps down? If I can get all that kind of information, maybe I'll change my mind. But just going off what I know, I think there was a guy who did this. But I think the Robert Rackstraw, I don't know if it was him exactly, but I think it was done, and I think it was a government operative, and I think that it was pulled off essentially to start getting people scared of flying, to get them to accept these security measures that are being put into place, that were eventually turned into what we have now. But like you said, you got to get the ball rolling somewhere. You had to start showing an ID when you bought a ticket. You had to start going through an X-ray machine. People were randomly searched. Not like it is now, not as bad as it is now, but
So you're agreeing with me.
Yes, but well, I guess so.
You're just putting it a little more eloquently.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess I agree about 85% with you, but I think that maybe we're kind of on the same page the more I think about it now. Because I'm starting to verbalize and get some of this out of my head.
I'm like, because it sounds like you're agreeing with me. You're probably just saying it better than I did.
But I think that all these stories that came out, all these people that have come out, is people that want to feel important. They want, again, the way that the story was crafted made the guy seem cool. He gets away with it. There's all this mystique surrounding it. It's a sketch of a guy. You have the flight attendant who says that didn't even really look like him. There's too many stories. There's too many conflicting details. The stuff with the tie. All these details that are conflicting. I think that it was a government op of some kind. It possibly was somebody that was trained paramilitary. Could have been CIA. And that this was all kind of not just for the security, but also to kind of see a social experiment, to see what would happen. How is the public going to react to this story? There was enough ambiguity that people could come in and fill in details here and there. We have, again, the discrepancies with the drink. We have all these different theories that are coming out of the woodwork. It's been almost 50 years now since this happened. It's 49 years. And the case is still going strong. There's D.B. Cooper conventions held every year. I think it could have very well, it was a government op of some kind, and it was essentially just to see what we can get done and how people are going to react to different stories in the media, and what kind of psychological effects it's going to have on people.
I could go along with that too. So we're on the same page.
So we're essentially on the same page. I think it was a big old false flag psyop. That's what I think. But now, everybody's like, well, we've been listening to you for a bit, and anybody that has, and like, you think everything's a government psyop. Yep, I do. Absolutely. I don't believe anything that comes off the news or the government. It's all made up. And if you do your own homework, and you start looking at some of the things that I've looked at, and you start picking apart some things and asking questions like we're asking, you'll probably come to that conclusion on your own as well.
I just want to say, I don't think Bigfoot is made up.
I don't either. I think there is a Bigfoot. I think the government.
So we don't believe everything is made up.
Well, I mean, when does the government come out and admitted to Bigfoot?
This is true.
Right? So.
But if they did, would you say you don't believe it now?
I'd probably then go, you know what? It's probably bullshit. I'm sorry. I don't trust anything that comes out of there. And again, when you look into how these intelligence agencies work, and you start to see some of the things that have gotten declassified over the years, and you see the different operations that they do.
It just makes you question things.
Question everything.
Question everything.
I question everything, and that's what I think this was. I think it was some kind of a psyop that was done, and it led to or security in airlines, which were very lax, not pretty lax, very lax.
Yeah.
Man, I wish it was still like that. I really do. I wish it was still like that.
Remember when people would smoke on planes? It's
Yeah,
like,
I mean-
it's a freaking like metal tube going at like hundreds of miles per hour in the sky at like thousands of feet above the earth, and people are like smoking. It's like the worst place to have a fire.
Yeah, right. Well, what's going to catch fire? You're in a metal tube.
With polyester seats.
I guess, but it's going to go out pretty quick,
Mm.
I would think.
I
But
know.
whatever. I don't wish there were still smoking on planes, but I wish the security was how it was back then, because I don't like flying now. Because I'm old enough to remember what it was like pre 9/11, when you could show up 5 minutes before your flight and get on your plane and
You
you'd
didn't
be
have to
fine.
take your shoes off.
You didn't have to take your shoes off.
I
and
remember
all
when
this
we
nonsense.
went to Florida and Aries was a baby, our middle child, and they inspected my breast milk. They made me because I put it in a bottle for him, and they hold this thing over it, and I'm just like, because I was like, you better not be dipping anything in there. We're going to have big problems. And they open it, and I'm just like, I don't think this is right. I mean, I know that they're looking for things, but I'm just thinking, that was prepared milk. What if something gets into it? What if particles of something get into it late?
It's amazing how quick we collectively as a population will just give up our rights for a little security.
Captain America, Civil War. That was the point. People are going to give up their freedoms for security.
You want security, you want safety, go to prison. You'll be safe there. You can sit in a, whatever it is, 8x10 cell. You'll get your 3 square meals a day, and you got a roof over your head, and you're good to go. That's when you want safety and security. There it is. Anywhere else, though, how about live and be a human and be free? And
Yeah.
stop being controlled by everything around you. But yes, going off on a totally different tangent,
Yeah.
but
Well, I was going to say,
But
we're out of
that's-
bourbon, so.
but that's real security.
Yeah.
If you want real security, that's where you get it.
Yeah.
You get your 3 square and you
Or
get a roof
have a
over
lot
your
of
head.
money and hire private security.
Or that. Nice.
But most people can't do that.
I would rather not do
I feel like we're going to have to come back to this, though. There's still so
that.
many.
Yeah, I'm still going
parts.
through. I'm
Yeah.
still going through a bunch of this stuff, and I think it'd be fun to just come back and do just strictly like a D.B. Cooper theories, like different
Yeah.
crazy theories
Yes.
of different suspects.
And that's where you guys can come in.
Yeah.
What theories do you have? Do you have information that we didn't talk about? Do you happen to know something? Did you happen to file a right to know request with the FBI and get copies of records? Like, let us know. What do you think?
Yeah, and you're gonna actually do this, aren't you? You're gonna go and file your own thing.
You know I'm gonna.
So again, we get that information and sift through all of it because I guess it's some
So
ridiculous
when
amount
you
of
do a
information,
right
isn't
to
it?
know request, you
Yeah.
have to put specifically what you're looking for. So I need to put a timestamp from this date to this date. I need to put specifically all written reports, if there's any photographs, if there was any video taken, asking for digital copies of that. So there's a lot. Like, you have to be very specific when you request this stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. And it might take a while to get it. And it's probably going to be heavily redacted, but I don't care.
All right. Yeah, it probably will be redacted, especially if it's what we
Someone's
think
gonna
it is, where
hate
it's-
me.
Where it's some
Whoever's
some
job
government
it is,
off.
yeah.
They probably redact everything.
Whoever job it is in like the records department to get that stuff is going to hate me. I apologize. But I want to know.
Yes, you apologize because they're listening or watching right now.
You never know.
True. We probably got put on some,
We're on
some
so
watch
many
list, I'm
lists.
sure.
Whatever.
Sorry, stuff we've said and talked about.
Yeah.
It is what it is. What are you going to do? So, if you want to share any of your theories, you can find us on social media. Well, you got to find me on social media because I'm pretty much done with social media. I'm completely off of it now. Monique, where can they find us on Twitter,
At Homewrecker Pod.
Instagram,
Homewrecker Podcast.
and we have a website too?
We do. HomewreckerPodcast.com. And we're also on the Parler app.
Oh, that's right.
Still trying to get used to finding people on there who to follow. I have to say it's very like Republican-y. I thought it might be more just like open freedom of speech. So if you're on Parler, let us know. Follow us.
Well, the reason why it is that is because it was started as an alternative to Twitter and Facebook, who I guess are very heavily censoring people with that type of viewpoint, like a more right of center kind of viewpoint, conservative viewpoint, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the Parler app was started, but it's not just for the people that believe in that kind of stuff. It's just for people that want to speak freely and not worry about being censored and have to deal with censorship.
We don't want our crazy conspiracy theories to be censored.
Right. So, yeah, because they're crazy.
But you know
So
what I mean.
crazy. But yeah. So that's why the Parler app. If you go and sign up for it, I guess that there is a lot of that type of content right now because it's new, and that's essentially why it was started, was as an alternative to those other things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And another free speech platform you can find us on is Brighteon, where you can watch us if you're not already
yeah,
watching
so
us
it's a
on
YouTube
Brighteon.
alternative.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then YouTube.
As long
So
as we're still on YouTube.
Yeah.
Till we get kicked off of there.
hopefully not, but
Hopefully not, but
yeah, so if you're watching our videos, please subscribe and like our videos.
yes. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on iTunes if you follow us through there,
Or wherever.
wherever podcast app you get your podcast from. And when you get a moment, please kindly leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. Go big or go home. Right, baby?
Right. Whatever you say.
He said that to me on like our first date.
What?
We went out to dinner and you got a steak and they're like, oh, do you want like the 12 ounce or do you want to do the 16 ounce? And you're like, well, go big or go home. And I remembered that from our first date.
Wow. It was a long time ago.
It was.
All right. So
Good
there,
try.
so there you go. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do we know what we're going to talk about next week?
I don't know. Do you know?
I have a couple of things. There's something that I've wanted to talk about that we haven't yet, and it's kind of going back into more paranormal, kind of creepy stuff. I think next week we should talk about the black-eyed kids, black-eyed children.
Well, we've been talking about this for a while, about doing
Not
a
on
show.
the show.
on this. No, not on the show, but you
Right.
and I
Yeah.
at home have been discussing this about doing something.
Yes.
I'm game.
All right.
Hopefully our listeners are game too.
So next week, or next episode, whenever it'll probably be next week. But if we decide to record earlier, put it out as a bonus, or whatever, the next episode we will be talking about the black-eyed children.
Yay!
What are they? Who are they? Why are they?
What does it all mean?
We'll try and figure it out next week. But until then, I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion. I've been joined as always by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous, amazing trophy wife, the lovely Monique.
Thank you. And you've been listening to the Homewrecker podcast.